In the cramped navigation room of the Celestial Nomad, an aging airship moored precariously to one of the lower floating isles, she sat hunched over her maps and star charts. The room smelled of aged parchment, oil, and the faint tank of ozone from the storm battering the continent's edges. Her fingers traced the faded lines marking the lost Skylands territories once charted, now swallowed by shifting air currents and political chaos. Outside, gusts howled, rattling the ship's timbers, as if the very skies sought to challenge her resolve. Elara's sharp eyes, dark and intense despite the weariness etched into her lean features, flicked between the charts and the broken compass that had been her trusted tool. This compass, like her career, had pointed true once, before a catastrophic miscalculation led to the death of her crew and the shattering of her reputation. She had been a star navigator, renowned for her precision and daring, but that night had changed everything. Accusations of negligence had followed her like a shadow, driving her into isolation. A sudden knock at the door broke her concentration. She looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the storm-lit corridor. A man with sun-bleached hair tangled in rebellious waves and a jagged scar running over his left eye. Yarek Thorn, a name whispered with both fear and grudging respect across the floating isles, was here. "Voss," he said, voice rough like gravel and salt. "Word is, you're back in the game. Got an offer for you." Ilara's jaw tightened. She had hoped to avoid the undercurrents of Skyfold's lawless skies, the sky pirates and mercenaries who lived on the fringes of order. But this was her chance, however dangerous. The Council of Skyfold had quietly extended an offer she could scarcely believe: lead an expedition to reclaim the lost Skylands, territories rich with untold resources and ancient secrets, and redeem her name. At the bustling tavern where skyfarers gathered to swap tales and trade secrets, the air was thick with the scent of burnt oil, spiced ale, and the low hum of scheming voices. Elara met with Yarek, their first encounter charged with unspoken challenges. His brash confidence clashed with her cautious precision, but beneath the tension was a shared understanding of the peril ahead. "I'm not the leader type," Garrick admitted. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the floating cityscape, stars flickering through gaps in the clouds. "But even I know this mission needs someone who's been burned and can still fly straight." Elara's eyes narrowed. "I'm not sure I'm that person anymore." Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of Skyfold's ancient library, carved into the rock of a floating isle, Mira Solon bent over cryptic manuscripts and mechanical blueprints. Her pale skin glowed softly under the dim light as she carefully turned fragile pages. Her silver hair cropped short to avoid distraction. Descended from a long line of historians and engineers, Mira's calm, analytical mind sought to unlock the secrets buried in Skyfolds, drifting clouds' ancient technologies that could shift the balance of power. Elara sought Mira out, recognizing that the scholar's knowledge would be vital. Their first meeting was measured and respectful, a meeting of two minds bound by a shared hope to reclaim what was lost. As preparations for the expedition gathered momentum, Elara found herself grappling with the rising tide of doubt and the weight of expectation. On the deck of the Celestial Nomad, beneath a twilight sky streaked with crimson and gold, she stood alone. The wind tugged at her braid, and the distant calls of gull-like skybirds echoed through the cooling air. Around her, the crew moved with nervous energy, loading supplies and securing rigging. The future was uncertain, the dangers immense. But in that moment, Elara felt a spark of something she had long buried beneath guilt and regret: hope. The journey ahead would test every skill, every nerve. The skies of Skyfold were wild and untamed, filled with airborne dangers, shifting borders, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. Yet as the first stars blinked into existence overhead, Elara Voss made a silent vow to face the unknown, to lead, and to reclaim not just lost skylands, but her honor. The celestial nomad shuddered as the engines roared to life, the sails catching the wind's eager embrace. The expedition was underway. As the ship lifted from its mooring, the clouds parted briefly, revealing the vast expanse of the floating continent, endless and inviting, a canvas of air and possibility. The campaign had begun fraught with peril, yet pulsing with the promise of redemption. And somewhere in the shifting shadows of Skyfold, eyes watched and plans stirred, for the skies would not yield their secrets without a fight. The journey into the unknown had only just begun, and Elara's fate, intertwined with the fate of Skyfold itself, hung in the balance. Elara Voss stepped carefully onto the deck of the expedition vessel, her boots thudding softly against the weathered wood. The salty breeze teased the edges of her dark braid, carrying the distant calls of gulls and the rhythmic creaking of rigging swaying in the dusk wind. This was the beginning, the first true breath of a journey that could redeem or forever shatter her name. Her sharp eyes scanned the gathering crew. A tall figure leaned casually against the mainmast, sun-bleached hair wild and a jagged scar running above his left eye. Yorick Thorn, the notorious sky pirate and Elara's reluctant ally, offered a cocky grin that didn't quite reach the guarded glint in his eyes. Not far off, a slender woman with short silver hair adjusted a set of intricate tools with practiced hands. Myra Solon, the expedition's scholar and engineer, radiated calm focus amid the growing tension. Elara's gaze shifted to others. Lena Oris, the communications specialist, her fingers twitching near a console, and Kess Marlowe, the eager young apprentice navigator, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and nerves. The mosaic of faces represented a fragile coalition formed not out of trust, but necessity. The first official gathering was called below deck in the briefing room, a cramped and dimly lit chamber smelling faintly of oil and old paper. The flicker of lanterns cast shadows on the weathered maps pinned to the walls. Elara stood at the head of the table, her voice steady but carrying the weight of unspoken history. "We all have different reasons for joining this expedition," she began, "but our goal is shared, to reclaim the lost skylands and chart the unknown." Garrick's voice cut through the charged silence, brash and unapologetic. "Shared goals don't mean everyone plays nice. Pirates and explorers don't see eye to eye, Elara. You'll need more than words to keep this crew together." A murmur rippled through the room. Elara met his gaze steadily. "I don't expect easy cooperation, but if we don't trust each other, we won't survive the skies out there." Myra stepped forward, her voice calm and analytical. "Ancient technologies lie buried in the clouds. Our discoveries could change everything. We must remain focused." Tensions flared as differing motivations clashed. Yorick challenged the plan's caution, eager for swift action and fortune, while Myra advocated for careful study. Lena tried to mediate, her fingers tapping nervously on the communication console, intercepting snippets of distant signals that hinted at political maneuvering beyond their immediate concern. Elara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. She recalled the disaster that had destroyed her reputation, a navigational error that had cost lives and trust. Now surrounded by wary allies and potential enemies, she needed to prove her worth, not just to them, but to herself. Later, on deck, under the vast expanse of a deepening twilight sky, Elara and Mira found a moment of quiet amid the bustling preparations. The airship's wooden beams creaked softly, and the scent of oil mingled with the crisp evening breeze. Myra spoke of her hope to unlock the secrets of Skyfold's ancient past, her voice infused with quiet passion. Elara listened, the scholar's calm resolve a balm to her own restless doubts. As night settled, Yarrick stood at the ship's prow, silhouetted against the shifting clouds glowing with distant lightning. The wind tugged at his hair and cloak as he stared into the horizon, lost in thought. Elara approached cautiously, standing beside him in companionable silence. "You think this expedition will change anything?" Yarrick asked finally, breaking the quiet. Elara met his gaze, the tension between them softened by the shared uncertainty. "It has to, for all our sakes." A fragile truce hung in the air, the first step toward the uneasy alliance that would define their perilous journey. Above them, the skies of Skyfold waited, vast, uncharted, and alive with danger and possibility. The gathering clouds promised storms ahead, both in the skies and within the hearts of those who dared to fly among them. But for the first time since her fall, Elara felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The campaign had begun. Elara Voss leaned over a sprawling star chart pinned meticulously to the table, her fingers tracing the faint lines that connected ancient constellations. The chart was worn, its edges frayed from years of handling, but to Elara it was a sacred map, a guide through the vast, uncharted skies of Skyfold. Outside, the first light of dawn seeped through the small porthole, casting a soft golden glow that danced across the creased paper. "You see here, Kess," Elara said, her voice steady but gentle. "This cluster of stars isn't just decoration. Their positions tell us about the shifting currents and air pockets we need to avoid. Navigation isn't just about direction, it's about understanding the sky's language." Kess Marlowe, the young apprentice navigator, leaned in closer, her eyes wide with a mixture of reverence and nervousness. She clutched a worn sextant, an instrument Elara had personally handed her, its metal cool and weighty in her hands. "I thought it was just about following the compass," Kess admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Elara smiled faintly, the corners of her mouth tightening with a hint of the quiet pride she rarely displayed. "Ah, but a compass only points north. The true challenge is reading the stars, understanding how the winds shift, and predicting what the skies will throw at us next." Behind them, the cabin hummed with the low rumble of the engines. Yarrick Thorne lounged against the bulkhead, his sun-bleached hair tousled, and a mischievous glint in his scarred eye. "You really expect her to memorize all that?" he said with a smirk, his tone teasing but not unkind. "Might be easier to just charge through the skies with guns blazing." Mira Solon, seated nearby and focused on mending a delicate mechanical compass, glanced up briefly. Her silver hair caught the light as she shook her head. "Knowledge is the real weapon," she said quietly. "Without it, even the fiercest guns won't save you." Elara's gaze flicked toward Yarrick, an unspoken challenge lingering between them. His cavalier attitude toward the maps clashed with her meticulous approach, a tension that had become a quiet undercurrent since the expedition began. Yet, she knew Yarrick's bravado masked a deep loyalty to his crew, a loyalty she couldn't afford to ignore. Turning back to Kess, Elara crouched beside her and pointed to a cluster of faint symbols etched into the star chart. "These markings were made by explorers before us. They signify areas of turbulence, but also potential safe harbors hidden among the clouds. If we can decode their meaning fully, it could mean the difference between survival and disaster." Kess nodded, determination replacing her earlier apprehension. "I want to learn everything, Captain. I want to be ready." A subtle warmth spread through Elara's chest. This was why she fought to reclaim her honor, not just for herself, but for the future navigators like Kess, who would follow. Outside, the deck buzzed with activity as the rest of the crew prepared the airships for the coming journey. Ropes were coiled, sails adjusted, and instruments calibrated against the fading twilight. The vibrant hues of orange and purple painted the sky, casting long shadows that flickered across the weathered wood and metal of the fleet. Elara stepped out onto the deck, the cool evening air brushing against her skin. The crew gathered, faces illuminated by the last rays of sunlight, their expressions a blend of excitement and anxiety. She raised her voice, steady and clear, to address them. Tomorrow we chart the unknown. The skies ahead are unforgiving and the dangers are many. But together, with knowledge, courage, and trust, we will reclaim what was lost. This is our campaign, our chance to rewrite the future of Skyfold. A ripple of murmurs passed through the crew, some nodding, others exchanging wary glances. Yorick met her gaze across the crowd, his usual smirk replaced by a rare, sincere nod. It was a fragile truce, but a start. As night settled over the floating continent, the stars emerged, brilliant and unyielding. Elara returned below deck, her mind alive with maps and memories. She placed her hand on the star chart once more, feeling the weight of the past and the promise of the journey ahead. Charting the unknown, she whispered to herself, is more than a skillet, a hope. And with that hope, the expedition took its first true step into the vast, shifting skies of Skyfold, where every star held a secret, and every gust of wind could change fate forever. The night deepened, but inside Elara's cabin, the light of determination burned bright, guiding her, and those who followed, into the heart of the uncharted. The morning sun cast long rays across the floating continent of Skyfold, illuminating the complex dance of rigging, sails, and taut ropes that crisscrossed the assembled fleet. This was the beginning, the first flight into the unknown. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of ozone and the faint roar of the engines that powered their magnificent airships. Elara's sharp eyes swept across the horizon, where the vast expanse of uncharted skies awaited them. Around her, the crew moved with a mixture of nervous energy and practiced precision. Myra Solon adjusted the intricate instruments in the engineering bay, her slender fingers deftly calibrating the ancient technologies salvaged from forgotten planes. Tauren Vex barked clear commands, his broad shoulders tense as he marshaled the security teams, ever watchful for threats from both sky pirates and the unpredictable elements. Nearby, Kess Marlowe, the young apprentice navigator, fidgeted with star charts, her eyes wide with a blend of excitement and trepidation. Elara took a deep breath, steadying the whirlwind of doubt that churned beneath her calm exterior. The scars of past failures still haunted her, the catastrophic miscalculation that had shattered her reputation. But here, amid the creaking timbers and billowing sails, she found a renewed purpose. This expedition was her chance at redemption, her opportunity to chart a new course for both herself and the floating continent. The fleet began to stir. Ropes were cast off, sails unfurled, and the great airships lurched forward, rising slowly into the sky. The wind whispered through the rigging, carrying the mingled scents of salt and sky. Elara stood at the helm of the Destiny's Grace, her hands steady on the wheel, her eyes fixed on the shifting clouds ahead. All systems nominal, Mira's voice crackled over the comms, calm and precise. Engineering reports stable. Tauren's deep voice followed, security teams ready. Keep your eyes sharp, everyone. Then came Yarick Thorne's unmistakable drawl, laced with bravado. Let's see if these skies have teeth, eh? Elara's gaze flicked toward the rugged figure of Yarrick, his sun-bleached hair tousled by the wind, a roguish grin playing beneath the scar over his left eye. He stood on the deck of his ship, the Raven's Talon, a notorious sky pirate's vessel. His presence was a constant reminder of the uneasy alliance she had brokered. Sky pirates and explorers bound by necessity, but divided by history and trust. "Keep it steady, Yarrick," Elara replied firmly. "We don't need reckless stunts out here." "Reckless?" Yarrick laughed, his voice carrying over the wind. "I call it bold." The tension between caution and daring rippled through the fleet as the ships ascended higher. Unpredictable air currents churned like invisible rivers, tugging and twisting at the sails. The crew scrambled to adjust, their voices rising in coordination and command. Inside the navigation cabin, Elara guided Kes through the complexities of star charts and wind patterns. "Remember, Kes," she said gently, "the sky is ever-changing. You have to read it, not just follow it." Kes nodded, determination shining in her eyes despite the tremor in her hands. "I won't let you down, Captain." Outside, the wind howled as a sudden gust swept through the fleet, tossing the airships with wild abandon. The creak of strained timbers and the snap of ropes filled the air. Torin's voice boomed over the comms, "Brace for turbulence. All hands, secure your positions." Iliara's heart hammered as she fought to keep Destiny's grace steady. The ship lurched violently, sails flapping like thunderous wings. She caught a glimpse of Yarrick's ship veering dangerously close to a roiling cloudbank, his grin replaced by a sharp look of concentration. Yarrick pulled back, Elara commanded, but the defiance in his eyes was unmistakable. The Raven's Talon dipped and swayed, skimming the edge of the storm with reckless precision. The crew held their breath as the ship danced on the knife's edge between danger and mastery. Slowly, the storm passed, leaving the fleet battered but intact. The tension between Elara and Yarrick remained, simmering beneath the surface, but tempered by the shared relief of survival. "Not bad for a first flight," Yarrick said, his voice quieter now. "Maybe you're not as tight as I thought." Elara allowed herself a brief smile. "And maybe you're not as reckless as you like to pretend." As the ship settled into a cautious formation, the vast expanse of Skyfold stretched before them, a realm of shifting borders, hidden dangers, and untold mysteries. The first flight had tested their mettle, their skills, and their fragile alliances, but it was only the beginning. Elara stood at the helm once more, the weight of command settling comfortably on her shoulders. The skies were vast and unforgiving, but so was her resolve. The campaign had begun. Above, the wind whispered secrets only the bold dared to chase, and Elara Voss was ready to listen. The clouds thickened ahead, shadows dancing where light struggled to penetrate. The unknown loomed like a challenge, and Elara's eyes sharpened with determination. Whatever storms awaited, she would face them head-on, for honor, for redemption, and for the future of Skyfold. "All hands," she called softly into the comms, voice steady and resolute, "brace yourselves. The real journey begins now." The fleet surged forward, swallowed by the shifting mists of the uncharted skies, carrying with them hopes, fears, and the fragile bonds of an unlikely crew bound for destiny. And somewhere, far beyond the horizon, the echoes of the lost skylands whispered their ancient call. Elara Voss stood at the helm of the flagship, her sharp eyes narrowing as the first jagged bolts of lightning fractured the sky. The fleet was caught mid-crossing a perilous stretch of uncharted airspace, and the sudden tempest threatened to shred their fragile vessels to pieces. "All hands, brace for impact." Torin Vex's voice boomed through the comms, steady and commanding. His scarred face was set in grim determination as he moved like a shadow across the decks, issuing orders to secure rigging, close hatches, and ready the defenses. The security chief's presence was an anchor amid chaos, his broad shoulders absorbing the storm's wrath as he barked commands that cut through the rising wind. Elara's fingers clenched the polished wood of the wheel, the old maps she so often consulted now useless against the fury of the storm. Her mind raced, memories of past failures threatening to drown her confidence. The catastrophe that had ended her previous career, the miscalculation that had cost lives loomed like a dark cloud within her, but she pushed the ghosts aside. There was no room for doubt now, not with her crew depending on her. The flagship pitched violently as a blast of wind tore at its sails. From the lower deck, the clatter of loose equipment and shouted warnings echoed up to her ears. She caught a glimpse of Yarrick Thorne, standing near the helm of his own vessel, his sun-bleached hair whipped by the gale, eyes blazing with fierce resolve. Though their relationship had been rocky, forged in mistrust and differing ambitions, the storm demanded cooperation beyond personal grudges. Elara, the northern flank is taking heavy buffeting. Mira Solan's voice crackled through the comms. The slender engineer's calm, analytical tone was a rare comfort amidst the storm's cacophony. Structural stress readings are spiking. If we don't adjust our course, the whole fleet could be torn apart. Understood, Elara replied, her voice steady despite the fear knotting her stomach. Yarrick, we need you to lead a flank maneuver to break through the worst of it. Torin, keep the rear secure. Everyone else, stay sharp. The fleet responded like a living organism, shifting and weaving through the turbulent skies. Lightning crackled dangerously close, illuminating the taut faces of crew members scrambling to keep their vessels intact. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and rain, the metallic tamps of the ship's hulls mingling with the sharp bite of cold wind. Torin Vex was everywhere at once, his booming voice directing crew to man defensive stations as rogue air creatures, stirred by the storm, swooped in threateningly. His brawny frame was a bulwark against panic, and when a sudden lurch sent one of the smaller ships off course, he was there to coordinate a daring rescue, his scarred hands steadying the panicked pilot. Below deck, Elara found herself retreating to the navigation room, the small, cramped space her sanctuary amid the chaos. Lanterns flickered as rain hammered the thick glass, and the ship groaned under the storm's assault. She unfolded a worn star chart, tracing trembling fingers along constellations she had memorized years ago. The familiar patterns grounded her, but the weight of the expedition pressed down. "You're not alone, you know," a quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. Kess Marlowe, the young apprentice navigator, stood by the doorway, eyes wide but steady. "I believe in you, Elara. We all do." For a moment, the walls of doubt cracked. Elara allowed herself a brief, grateful smile. "Thank you, Kess. We'll get through this together." The storm raged on, but the crew's coordinated efforts began to pay off. The fleet's fragile formations held, the ships cutting through the tempest like blades through silk. When at last the skies began to clear, the exhausted but unbroken crew gathered below decks, the sense of relief mingling with the sting of cold and wet. Yarrick approached Elara, his usual bravado softened by exhaustion. "Not bad for a disgraced navigator," he muttered, offering a rare smile. Elara met his gaze, the tension between them easing. "Not bad for a stubborn pirate either." The moment was brief, but significant, a tacit acknowledgement of trust forged in the crucible of adversity. Torin Vex leaned against a bulkhead, wiping rain from his brow. "We made it through," he said simply, the weight of the fight evident in his voice. But this storm was just the beginning. Elara nodded, the taste of victory tempered by the knowledge of greater challenges to come. The storm had tested their mettle and their unity. Now they would need both to survive the uncharted skies and the shifting political winds threatening Skyfold. As the fleet resumed its course, the clouds parting to reveal a pale blue horizon, Elara allowed herself a moment of hope. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since the disaster that had shattered her past, she felt the stirrings of something stronger than doubt-renewed purpose and the fierce spark of leadership. The skies of Skyfold awaited, vast and unpredictable, and Elara Voss was ready to face them head-on.